What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of E4 Code Geass Roze of the Recapture. This is episode 3, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
So I thought it was a decent episode. Like, even though it was a slightly slower episode, it did kind of
Yeah,
reveal like the insides of like how the Neo-Britannian government works.
we okay, yeah. So this episode, like, yeah, we do get more world building elements at least because they actually explain what's going on with like Neo Britannia and somewhat with the Black Knights. But it just gets a little, in my opinion, at least to me, it's just even more frustrating once we learn what's actually going on. Like, they, this, we see Norland for once, and I just can't, first of all, like, I don't really know anything about Norland, but I know I can't really take his character seriously already because there's a running joke with like a lot of the Gundam shows that Sunrise does, is that there's basically a Char clone in like all these the other Gundam series, because there'd be a villain wearing like a mask like Char. And then now in Code Geass they have their own Char clone, which I guess is Norland, is, because he literally is wearing the Char mask. But so that's what we see of Norland so far. And then we have a new emperor of Neo Britannia, which I was scratching my head at, to be honest, because I'm like, wait a minute. So Neo Britannia pops up, and they're organized enough now to have a new emperor of Britannia, which is a child. And then the child gets, I mean, it's funny because they introduce him, and then in the same episode, like, I guess he gets assassinated or something.
Assassinated.
Yeah, like, what is going on? And then the apparently the Black Knights are aware of what's going on with the Hokkaido, and they know about it. And we learned that I guess they've had prior negotiations with them. And I mean, it's kind of ridiculous already that you're even like negotiating in the first place, because as far as I understand, like they have control of like a small area of Japan, and versus the Black Knights and the United Federation of Nations, which is more or less the rest of the world, and you're like negotiating with them. Like, I mean, honestly, like, they really should just destroy the barrier somehow, or just try to get inside, because I mean they're just completely, they should be at least completely outnumbered. And I mean, like, we're also supposed to believe this takes place 3 years after the original series, and they're organized enough to have an emperor, and to have like I guess a significant fighting force. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest. I feel like if this was such a big threat, that at the very least we should have Suzaku come in and just kind of, at least, like, if he can't get through the barrier, like, somehow brute force his way through with the Lancelot,
Yeah.
and just destroy.
The thing is, like, they can't infiltrate they can't penetrate the shield from the outside. Somebody within the inside has to destroy the generator and take down
But then
shield.
the other thing too, we have scientist characters like Nina, for instance, who, at least in the original series, developed the weapon, or helped develop the Flea. And I mean, you would think that, I mean, we do see that she is, I guess, eventually going to show up in the series. But I mean, I would have figured, like, we could get somebody who could figure out how to get rid of the barrier, who's smart enough. Get somebody like her to like deactivate it or something, and have everybody just charge in.
She's not the only one. That, like, Lloyd is with them.
Yeah, there's still Lloyd. Yeah, there's plenty of people, I feel like, who could get around this. So it's just kind of, it just kind of leaves me wondering, like, what's actually going on with the rest of the world, and how they're dealing with this situation.
Yeah. Okay. So it's mostly like, more of a downtime slice of life episode, featuring, well, Sakya, who's taking a break for once, from dealing with all the fighting that she had to go through in the past 2 episodes. So
it's also it's also definitely a more fan servicey episode as well, because of course. I think everybody's probably seen the preview images, but we at least learned that Sakya has of course, like, plenty of assets. She was binding her chest, of course. So we find out about that.
So like she's also friends with within a well, like with the Britannian that owns like the what was it the maid cafe that she's staying at. Her name is Natalia. Natalia is also introduced as an important character because she works alongside, uh, the emperor in this episode. So basically, well, she's the reason why she's doing this is to at least try to to work as a double agent to help Sakya gain information on how to save Sakura from from the last episode. But of course, like
Hmm.
she's run into some roadblocks thanks to Norland being involved. So, but yeah, but it's like but it gets into the in the next part of the episode where Natalia convinces Sakia to work part time as a maid there under the alias named Raspberry. So what happens in this episode is Ash, who's all by himself, decides to go out shopping, and he runs into one of the other maids that works with the cafe, and like he helps her you know well actually he saves her from like two other Britannian thugs from assaulting her. So she takes him over to the maid cafe, and then of course, to Sakuya's surprise, like they're of course they're in the same building together. But of course, like Ash doesn't realize that 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 who she is, or nor does he know that it's Roze either. So yeah, it gets into this
Hmm.
comedic segment in which he kind of grows like a bit of a crush or is a bit smitten with Sakya. So he orders like at least over like a dozen cups of coffee in front of her. So but much of the important developments of this episode is involving not just what happens to the young emperor, but what happens to Sakura as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we do get like some interactions with her and the that one pilot. I forget what her name was. It
Is it
was
Catherine? Was it?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, and yeah, I mean, we get a little bit of that. Just the I kind of would have liked to get more about her character, but we don't really get much of that in this episode, unfortunately.
yeah,
Um,
and also
yeah.
another interesting development is Norland talking to the scientist. Um, I have a good reason to believe that they're working on something that would. I mean,
Oh.
you mentioned that like despite like Neo Britannians, like I guess like you mentioned that they're not as powerful as the United Federation of Nations, but
Well, they
obviously
shouldn't be.
they obviously have something that would likely turn the tide in their favor.
Yeah. Well, we also see too at the beginning of the episode that they're like, I guess we see the people who I guess are technically like in charge of Neo Britannia or like some of the higher ups, because they're having like a meeting or they're convening after being defeated by the rebel group at the beginning of the episode, and the guy who's I guess responsible for it, like he ends up, I guess he ends up killing himself in
Mhm.
disgrace. Um, and but I guess that's just to introduce like the higher ups, because we did see we do see some of them, but we don't really get much with them, unfortunately. Like I think I guess they're gonna maybe show up again later, but one of them, I guess, he just because of his failure, he just kills himself.
Yeah.
um,
Uh, but
yeah.
yeah, just by the end of this episode, yeah, you mentioned that this young emperor he just gets assassinated out of nowhere for what reason? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
I mean, of course, like in the original series, you would have like a major villain get introduced, or like a really someone who's supposed to be really important get introduced and then get killed off pretty quickly. But there would always be like a kind of at least a reason for that. And I'm not sure, like it just feels like this season or this series has like introduced like a lot of these like these major villains and then just have them get killed off in the same episode. It's just kind of crazy. Like I'm just like, okay, what was the reason for that? I don't know. Maybe there's some bigger conspiracy going on that doesn't get revealed. I mean, maybe until
yeah.
later. Um,
What's messed up about this is that this emperor like has no idea like what the ins and out of like of what he's doing, like
Yeah.
controlling.
Like, obviously, I think he's just being used as, like, some kind of a figurehead or
Yeah,
something.
it's obvious that Norland and his other knights are basically just the de facto leaders of Neo Britannia at this point. But for the reason why they wanted to just kill this kid, and like for whatever reason, and then as a result of this, Sakya like you know is revealed as the heir of the Britannian throne.
Yeah. Yeah, so they already know, like, who she is. Um, and, also we should mention too, we get, like, I guess we get a cameo appearance of also of Kagura, or,
Kaguya?
yeah, like, yeah, Kaguya Sumeragi, yeah. Um, and I think they say, like, she's, I guess she's like just hanging out at like one of the embassies or something. I'm not sure. Like she's not. I guess that's why she's not involved. But we at least like I guess to get to see her
Yeah,
briefly.
I mean, obviously she
Um,
has knowledge of what's happening in Hokkaido, but we don't know like what else she's doing just to try to help out with the whole situation. And then of
yeah,
course, um, and of course, like with with Sakura, which of course she's the decoy, with Sakia technically becoming the new empress. This of course takes the real Sakia by surprise, and this of course flashes her back to an encounter with Lelouch, of once she acquired her Geass for the first time.
yeah. Um, I'm hoping they reveal more with that because I'm wondering why Lelouch granted her the power of Geass. Um, so I'm hoping that we get to see more with that too. I mean, I mean, I kind of don't want Lelouch to play like a huge role in this or anything. I just kind of want to know what his, like, why he decided to grant Geass to her. Um, I mean, maybe there's like a significant reason for it, but or like why he was there in the first
Mhm.
place. Like, of course, we know that after the events of Lelouch of the Resurrection, that he's just kind of traveling around with C2 at the moment.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like there's a completely different dynamic with in comparison between Sakia and Lelouch, because Lelouch, like, he's always had C2 by his side, just basically just explaining to him about like how the power of Geass works, and basically just giving him warnings about like what the downsides of having Geass, would have. For this,
Well,
Sakia,
and I mean, she's also kind of gotten him out of life and death situations quite a few times as well. Um, whereas Sakya doesn't really have anything like. I mean, well, I guess you could say Ash, but Ash is just doing it because he's been Geassed.
yeah, and she doesn't have like like a C2 figure like to guide her, but, like, and how to use Geass, or what the consequences of her using that power would do. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I'll it's gonna be pretty interesting to see like how it'll affect her, like, moving on to the remaining episodes.
yeah. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about the episode. It does feel like this episode was very much like had a lot of kind of like some slice of life elements to it, and we're of course familiar with that with the Code Geass series. But it did at least also have some world building elements. But it feels like the more answers we get about what's going on, the more confusing it kind of gets. Once as at least if you know anything about like the world of Code Geass and everything that happened after the original series and how the world at least should be, it kind of makes you wonder like what's really going
Mhm.
on. And but yeah. Aside from that, though, I don't really have much else to say. I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I still think this was an interesting episode. Like, we do get to learn more about like how Neo Britannia's government currently is, up to this point. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I was a little bit surprised that they decided to have like initially have a child, become the emperor, and then but all of a sudden, like, out of nowhere, they just kill him off, and then have Sakia, well, Sakura, become the newest empress. Which is interesting is like, they this version of Neo Britannia is like following like the older Britannia, in which, like, they view like 11s as like inferior to them, which
Is
is interesting.
isn't so another question though is like is is Sakura like, is she fully Japanese or half Britannian, like half Japanese? Because like, of course we know about like the Britannians like completely like are discriminatory against Japanese and 11, so that I
I
mean
mean,
they
if
wouldn't want
it,
someone
I mean,
who's
with the Sakya being revealed as like as Britannian, like obviously she's Japanese and Britannian,
yeah.
a mixture of both. So it's
But even then, like that's another thing too. Like, because at least in the original series, there even if you were half, like they still would discriminate against you because you're not fully, Britannian. So I don't know. I kind of have some questions about that too because I'm like, well, I mean, obviously there's some ulterior motives I think
yeah,
to them doing that
yeah.
in the first
I mean,
place.
there has to be a reason why Norland of all people would want to take that road of having like half Japanese, half Britannian, becoming the empress of the Neo Britannian Empire. So I mean, we'll have to
Hmm.
see where that goes. But I guess maybe there's some strategy behind this just to quell the Japanese resistance in that part of Japan, maybe. But it's hard. It's really hard to tell. What the motivations are of like having to do this.
Yeah. But yeah, guys. So that all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.